This week's episode of Top Level Podcast is brought to you by Mack Weldon. For 20% off your order, visit mackweldon.com and use promo code TOPLEVEL.
Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J. What's poppin'?
Oh, yeah. Full Ixalan spoiler this week, which tons of stuff I totally want to talk about.
Cool. Tell me more. Like, what kind of stuff you want to talk about, Michael J?
Well, we talked about a lot of the flip cards past couple of weeks, transforming cards, but one of the ones that was kind of missing from the mix was the red one, and I think the red one's a little bit exciting.
So it's, man, did we really not talk about this?
Mm-mm.
God, well, there you go. Okay, Vance's blasting cannons. 3 in a red, legendary enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast that card this turn. And whenever you cast your third spell in a turn, you may transform Vance's blasting cannons, which transforms into Spitfire Bastion, a legendary land that taps for a red, or you can pay 2 in a red, tap it, and deal 3 damage to target creature or player.
So, I love the front side of this card, kinda, but I really love the back side of this card.
Well, let's start with the front side. What do you kinda love about this front side?
This card is like, I don't know, 2/3 of an Outpost Siege. I'd say it's more than half of an Outpost Siege, but less than a full Outpost Siege, right? 2 things. A true Outpost Siege, which also costs 4 mana in red, has a very similar ability to Vance's Blasting Cannon's first line of text. But that ability also allows you to play lands, which this one doesn't. So it's not quite there. But at the same time, that Outpost Siege also has the other ability, which is to deal damage based on creatures going to the graveyard, which this one doesn't on the front side. So it's like a lot. Like Outpost Siege is a great card, right? I think like we're probably in agreement on that. It was a pretty solid card, played in a lot of successful decks. So this isn't quite as good as an Outpost Siege.
Not quite as good, isn't it? Like, even if you feel like the spells are worth more than the land, aren't we only talking about 60% of the cards?
I said like 2/3. Up at 60% fine. Something around there. It's
okay,
less,
and let's say it's
full.
2/3.
Yeah.
Since when did 2/3 of the effect approximate the effect? Isn't that like... Do you feel like 2 mana deal 2 is about as good as 2 mana deal 3?
Let me think. 2 mana deal 2 has to have something solid attached to it for me to do it. 2 mana deal 3 I'll often play even at sorcery speed.
Right.
So, but the thing is, it's not just the front side, right? If this were only the front side, I think it'd probably get played somewhere. But it's the promise of potentially getting the back side that makes this card exciting, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree that this one's about the other side.
But I think the front side's good. Like, I think it's not... I mean, it's not...
Good relative to what?
Good relative to not playing it in some decks that want an effect in red that generates card advantage.
The only reason... Okay, let's talk to me about the backside, because I got some questions on the front side when we get back to it, I guess.
All right. So,
I'm curious, because Outpost Siege was a polarizing card before, too.
Yeah?
Yeah, are you kidding?
I remember Outpost Siege getting played as a 4-of in red-white beatdown decks. I played it in the sideboard of the red deck that you designed for Pro Tour Vancouver. I was really happy with it there. So I thought it was great. I hated playing against it when I was control. I guess part of the reason you hate playing against it when you're control is because of the other ability, right? But that's beside the fact. The Spitfire Bastion side, I think, is really powerful. It has that same kind of effect that a lot of these Ixalan transform kind of enchantment into legendary land cards, which is kind of a pseudo ramp. That's one thing, which is, that's a thing. I don't think it's the main thing. It is part of the value. But the 2 and a red tap, Spitfire Bash deals 3 damage to target creature or player, I think is very significant. 2 things. A, Vance's blasting cannons can be effective in decks other than aggro decks because of this. Like, if you just for sake of argument, let's say you were playing it in Grixis, right? You just, cast 3 ops or something. Then you could flip Spitfire Bastion and have a very legitimate victory condition that's hard to deal with on the battlefield. But other than that, and this is maybe shows some of my personal bias, this is a really easy card for especially mono red decks to play, reasonably easy to flip, that allows them to deal with cards. I'm just going to say these terms. They're not necessarily in standard, but extensible to a bunch of different formats. It can shoot down a core Firewalker or an Auriok champion, a creature with protection from red. Any kind of creature that is so difficult for some of these red decks to deal with. It's just pew pew pew, and you still got next turn's pew pew pew.
Huh. So Spitfire Bastion contributes to pew pew pew.
Right? It should shoot down a core Firewalker. That's awesome.
That is one use of it. I'm wondering, would you play an enchantment that costs 6 that was tap and pay 2 and a red to deal 3 damage to target creature or player?
So it costs 6 to get into play, and then it has an activation cost and a tap.
Tap and pay 2 and a red to deal 3 damage to something.
I probably would not play that card.
So, Vance's Blasting Station isn't just that card. But when you're aspiring to flip it, in many ways it is that card. Now, you're saving the mana on the, because you are playing 2 cards that cost 1 or 2. But, you literally have to, and this is setting aside using it as the front side. I'm just talking about flipping it immediately. Things have to be going well for you to even be able to get the 6-cost card I just described, where you play Vance's Blasting Station and 2 1-cost cards in the same turn, and even then you still don't get an immediate activation. You kind of have to be in for some amount of the 60% of 50% of Outpost Siege. 60% of 50% of Outpost Siege, that's only 30% of an Outpost Siege. Now, admittedly, it's not really, because even with Outpost Siege, you weren't getting both. You were getting your choice of one. But, we're missing the really great ability of Outpost Siege. Now, flipping it, I think Spitfire Bastion seems like a very powerful permanent, and I think that the key to where I'm going with all this is not to say that Vance's Blasting Cannons isn't good, because I think the card has potential. I just think that it's very dangerous to use it just as a straight-up busted engine, and I think that making it too much of an Outpost Siege is going to lead you down. There's a good chance that it's a little bit of a trap. I mean, you can do it as an Outpost Siege in the sideboard, where it's just like a source of card advantage and inevitability after sideboarding. It's great at that role. But the card, just like Outpost Siege had competition at 4. Remember, before, Chandra, Pyromaster, Butcher of the Horde, there were always all kinds of different cards that various red decks would have that were in competition with Outpost Siege. And at times it was right to just main deck 4 Outpost Sieges. At times it was right to sideboard, and there's every shade in between. But it's not like there's a shortage of good 4s now either. Chandra, Torch of Defiance is a freaking fantastic card, right?
Sure, and potentially in direct competition with this.
Right, and
non-creature permanent 4, and Chandra, or at least arguably, has better impact the turn you play it.
And then there's also stuff like Rowdy Crew. I think Rowdy Crew's got a lot of power, and they're just throughout the color red, the 4 spot right now is a little crowded. So anyway, I think that Vance's blasting cannons is it has applications as like a source of inevitability and card advantage after boarding, but I'm unsure of just how. I don't know that it's going to end up lining up exactly like Outpost Siege with regards to its main deck applications. Like, for instance, Vance's blasting cannons, to me, looks way, way better in some kind of a... like, for instance, picture this card in, like, a red-black control deck. This seems like this is exactly what they've always dreamed of, right?
I mean...
Yes,
I think it depends on the composition. There's many different kinds of red-black control decks, right? I think it depends on the composition. I can imagine wanting this card in a red-black control deck. Yeah, like it gives you grindy card advantage potentially, and it gives you an awesome victory condition potentially.
I would guess that for like red aggro main deck, you're going to want to have cards that can more immediately impact the board, like Hazaret. Like, Hazaret and Chandra are such a high bar.
Oh, I have very low expectations of a red aggro deck main decking this card, specifically because of those 2 cards. I also have Rowdy Crew ahead of those cards, at least potentially in red aggro at the 4. But I think that this is an interesting option to play in the sideboard, in the same way that we did in Vancouver. I think that some control decks might want it, like you said, a red-black control deck. I was actually thinking like more like a blue-red or a Grixis deck, a deck that has a ton of opts, those kind of effects, or duresses. I think has some potential synergy here, and you know, I really was thinking about red aggro siding this specifically in an effort to deal with problem permanents, and have a source of damage or inevitability that wasn't creature based. Like sometimes they just get all their creatures locked out, for example.
Fair.
Like you can't. Like you can certainly cast out the front side of Vance's blasting cannons, but you can't cast out Spitfire Bastion. Just that's pretty good.
Well, you do get a chance if you have the mana open that turn to get it before it flips. Right, like in response to it only triggers the one time. So in response to the trigger, you cast out Vance's blasting cannons.
Yeah, that's true. I'm still very excited, but I'm high on this guy.
Yeah, but where? I'm not saying you shouldn't like it. It seems sweet.
I think like all those places. I think potentially sideboard and red aggro, potentially in a control-ish deck. Yeah, I guess that's
what kind of control-ish deck though?
I was thinking Grixis, right? Like because of opts and duresses, things that cost a cheap amount of mana.
So you're not going to play any counterspells?
I mean, I sketched out a Grixis control deck that had no counterspells in it just today.
That sounds like a black-red control deck with the Scarab God. And if so, that sounds okay to me. But it sounds like if you add opt, that you're kind of... Well, either way, it sounds like a proactive mid-rangey strategy at the very least is promising, right?
Yeah, I think, who knows what I there's some pretty solid guesses on how the new standard format is going to start, but who knows where it's going to shake out too.
It's kind of cool that you can untap the Spitfire Bastion with if you end up in a spot of having anybody who can actually give you extra mana, like any of the untapper guys. I don't know which ones are still legal right now, but I assume there's got to be one somewhere, right?
Oh, just to get like 6 damage out of it?
Yeah, going long. Or is it too greedy?
Yeah, do you really dislike the front side effect on this, or do you just think it's real inconsistent, or do you think I'm just overrating it? Or...
I don't know. I think that I would use it whenever it's correct. I don't know how much to like it or not, but it's like much weaker than Outpost Siege unless you're going to flip it.
Yeah, I would, of course, agree with that. Not for even any other reasons that you were talking about. Unlike Outpost Siege, it's a legend. So all those games where you look at Sam Black's board and he's got like 3 Outpost Sieges in play that have different pieces of paper on them. You could never have that with Vance's blasting cannons, or you could only ever have one. And like you said, it's only like half of 2/3 of an Outpost Siege. So that's like 1/9 as good as just what Sam Black would have in play on the average turn.
Although, like we talked about last week, this is one where, because Spitfire Bastion and Vance's blasting cannons have different names, we can actually you can have one of each in play. So at least you got that going for you.
Well, also, the blue one, this is a May, so you don't have to flip it. So that's pretty cool.
Right, and then it is an enchantment for your graveyard. Even if you flip it into a land, it'll be an enchantment in your actual graveyard, meaning you'll be able to recur it with anything that could recur enchantments.
Sure.
Should such an opportunity present itself, particularly from some of the Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation cards.
I do think it's worth just highlighting in specific that Vance's Blasting Cannons is kind of two different spells even on the front side, right? One of them is you could play it on turn 4, you're tapping out, or turn 3 with a Mana Accelerator, and it does nothing that turn, but then kind of grinds you into an Outpost Siege-like ability with, 2/3 of an extra card every turn, potentially.
Well, it depends on what you value, because in a red aggro deck, it's kind of a full card, though. Because once you're at a space where the extra land doesn't matter to you, if you ever get to such a space, then in many ways it's a full card.
Yeah, I think that there's just some awkward spots where you kind of want to hit your land drop. The Vance's Blasting Cannons reveals a land that you can't play and then you don't draw a land. That's pretty annoying, but that's kind of beside the point. But that's one iteration of the card, and then other iteration is you have 2 shocks or a shock and a spray, whatever, in your hand and 6 lands, and you just go Blasting Cannon, spell, and immediately flip it. And I think that those are going to be both things that people do and very different experiences. But that they could both potentially be good.
Well, see, what I wonder is if you can combine stuff like Vance's Blasting Station and Growing Rights of Itlimoc with stuff like Benefaction of Ronos.
So I don't know that we talked about Growing Rights of Itlimoc last time.
Which is 2 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And at the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more creatures, transform Growing Rights of Itlimoc.
So it's kind of like half of a Gift of the Gargantuan to begin with, but then its backside is a very comparable to Gaia's Cradle.
Yeah, it's better than Gaia's Cradle.
Yeah.
So, it depends on how much value you have for a Gaia's Cradle. But, I could see this. I think that in order to really get your money's worth from Growing Rights, you have to be kind of in the market for Gaia's Cradle itself. And then trying to do enchantments and 4 creatures seems like a lot. But I also wonder if you could play a 3-color deck using Search for Azcanta.
Yep.
Because if you have Search for Azcanta and the red one, Vance's Blasting Station with Benefaction, it is cute that Benefaction puts lots of cards into your graveyard so that you can flip the search faster.
Which one is Benefaction, Patrick?
It's 2 and a green. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature card and or an enchantment card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. So, it'd be really nice to... It's easy to come up with 15 creatures or whatever, but coming up with 15 enchantments that you actually want is a little tricky sometimes. And if you can get some powerful enchantments that transform and take on a different, I guess, use later in the game... Because I want to flip Search for Azcanta as soon as possible in a lot of decks.
Sure. And the thing is, Search for Azcanta can also push away extra legends if you don't want them.
Yeah, and if you know what's... if you're digging through... if you're digging through your deck with Benefaction and Search for Azcanta, that's 2 different forms of library manipulation, so it's just... I don't know, it just seems like it's interesting, the possibility of digging into stuff for some kind of an enchantment deck. I'm always looking for the new synergies of how some of those cards can connect. Well, so it seems like you're pretty high on Vance's Blasting Cannons.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a card that I'm excited to try to build with. I can imagine it being very good.
Yeah,
I can imagine it being incredibly difficult for some decks to beat. You know, like how Ramming Up Ruins is in red aggro. Like Ramming Up Ruins against blue-red control, for example. Like you just get the blue-red control deck to a certain life point, and they're just going to lose to the deserts. I think there's going to be some matchups at least where they can't let Vance's Blasting Cannons land, or they're eventually going to die. Or they have to close out the game. It also, just subtly, if the opponent has like a ton of creature removal, this can put pressure on Planeswalkers. I think that's a thing.
So how do you think this, I guess, combines or conflicts with Ramming Up Ruins? Is it actually feeding into the right direction for the inevitability, or do they actually end up at odds? Where, like, it's not getting you lands for the Ramming Up Ruins plan, and it's flooding you with some extra cards so you don't have mana to use the Ramming Up Ruins. And if you flip it, then it still costs enough mana that you can't actually power it and power the Ramming Up Ruins.
I think that certainly there will be decks attempted that have both Vance's Blasting Cannons and Ramming Up Ruins, and that when they're in the deck at the same time, like as we were talking about, maybe this is a sideboard card rather than a main deck card in red aggro. It's going to be one of those things that I can land this one or this one, and those are going to whichever one I land is going to be the one that helps me win. And they don't necessarily have to be friends, right? Like I can win from path A or I can win from path B, and they're not mutually exclusive in the 60.
But one interesting problem that is presented is that if your plan going long is to dome people with the Spitfire Bastion, and your plan going long is to dome people with Ramming Up Ruins, both of those plans involve lands that deal damage to the person's face. You're starting to talk about adding enough redundancy to the same type of plans that other people are going to be even, like, say somebody boards in or has main deck whatever their answer is against Ramming Up Ruins. Now they, for free, already have some answers. It doesn't mean they always have the answer at the right time. But, like, imagine that the blue-black control deck is playing Field of, or blue-red or whatever, is playing Field of Ruin. Field of Ruin is that land that taps for a colorless, and if you pay 2 and tap and sacrifice Field of Ruin, destroy target non-basic land and opponent controls. Each player searches his or her library for a basic land card, puts it onto the battlefield, and shuffles his or her library. So Field of Ruin is like a ghost quarter, but you can only ghost quarter your opponent. But then for 2 extra mana, you also get a free rampant growth. So it's like very respectable as far, like, it seems to me like better than Ghost Quarter in general. Not in like a powered format where mana is at a premium, but like, isn't this card excellent? Like an excellent way to deal with Ramming Up Ruins?
I think this card is excellent. That's speaking as a player who got destroyed by Ghost Quarter recently. But I think that Field of Ruin, I think is going to be a whiz-bang, if not like 4 of staple, it's going to be a go-to card for control decks in the sideboard. I think it's going to be not unlike Tectonic Edge. You remember, like, maybe 5 years ago, 7 years ago, people would play like 26 land control decks that had 4 Tectonic Edge main deck.
I did all the time.
Field of Ruin is going to serve a very similar position, and I think that it has so little downside because of the rampant growth ability. There's going to be some cases where you actually are in the bonus, right? Like, your opponent either doesn't play basics or they're out of basics when you pop the Field of Ruin, so you get to rampant growth and they don't. That's something that you can help get an advantage on at the deck design stage. But yeah, I think this card's going to be awesome, and I'm kind of shocked it's an uncommon.
Yeah, this seems like one of the best cards in the set to me.
Yeah, fully agree.
Field of Ruin to me seems better than Tectonic Edge, better than Ghost Quarter in a lot of ways. Like, this is just an amazing card. I mean, situationally those might have been better, so it's confusing. But just in terms of the raw efficiency, this card seems absolutely fantastic. And the reason I was bringing it up is not only like are people going to be priced into playing tons and tons of Field of Ruins in their control decks to deal with Realming Up Ruins, they're going to just already have the answer to your quote-unquote inevitability. And, of course, you don't have to flip it. I know not having to flip it is, like, part of the equation. And it doesn't mean they just have an infinite amount of these, right? But, like, there are other ways to have endgame inevitability besides Spitfire Bastion, right? Like, you could, for instance, you could theoretically be trying to win going along with the repeated barrage, which is the new Hammer Bogarden. The 1 red repeated barrage deals 3 damage to target creature or player, and it has raid of 3 red. Return repeating barrage from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only if you attacked with a creature this turn.
That was on my short list of cards I wanted to talk about. I think it's a little generous to call it the new Hammer of Bogarden.
No, it's like Hammer Bogarden. It's certainly a Hammer Bogarden up and down. It just has a slightly, like, the cost to buy it back. Instead of having to buy it back on your upkeep, you can buy it back anytime you want after you've attacked. And then it's actually 3 red instead of 2 red.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that my personal take is that the raid clause makes it much more restrictive than Hammer of Bogarden. For example,
Agreed.
Control decks in that era might have just played Hammer of Bogarden as their way to win. So that's just not even an option here, because unless you have a bunch of creatures that you're attacking with, you can never buy it back. Will this be a great solution for beatdown decks? I actually don't know. Like, it seems very slow to me. You need 8 for the full cycle, and you're putting guys in harm's way in order to get the repeating barrage back. I certainly think it'll be playable card and played in some decks, but I think it's pretty restrictive.
What do you think about this card with Pia Noir and Whirler Virtuoso and like a few random dudes like that? Would that be enough, or do you need to be like full on really have creatures?
Because you think like just getting, like the 1/1 tokens and you can just bonus fly them in?
Well, I'm not saying that I think anything. I'm asking what you think.
I'm asking what you're suggesting if that's the.
I'm not suggesting anything. I don't know. I try not to.
Yeah, I'm not enthused by that.
Okay, what about red green with like, there's plenty of good 2-drops, and Glorybringer and the Bristling Hydra, and like having stuff in that space. Is that going to be enough, or is it still just too slow?
I think it seems too slow. My take on this card is I'm trying to imagine when I would want it, right? And like who would want this versus playing some other tool. First of all, I think it's unlikely I would typically want this card in the main deck. I think that I'd want it because I just wanted to get 3 more damage in, maybe 6 more damage in, and I'm willing to pay like a pretty restrictive price in order to get to that position. The number of decks I can think of, like, I don't think that very many multicolor decks probably want this. Like, not none, but, like, if I'm playing Whirler Virtuoso, I really just, I'm imagining, like, Teamer Energy, for example. I don't think Teamer Energy cares for this card. I think they've got better things to do with their 5 mana.
Well, what about a deck with, like, 4 Cathartic Reunions and 4 Strategic Plannings?
I can imagine a deck with those cards, but I don't think this is the red payoff that they're going for.
You don't like discarding this or like Cathartic Reunion?
I mean, it's just like, it's such a minor bonus to me. Like, why would I do that instead of setting up for Godpharaoh's Gift? Like, if I was going to go in that direction, I feel like going for Godpharaoh's Gift or something with like a much more expansive payoff in terms of the graveyard is something I'd rather do than get a super conditional, like not even Volcanic Hammer. It's like overcosted Volcanic Hammer. If I'm going to do that, what you're talking about, forget about the initial investment of Cathartic Reunion or Strategic Planning on 2. I'm 8 mana in before I have any text on this card. And I've had to raid. It's just a lot.
No, you're 5 mana in.
You think that buying the card back and not casting it is that seems like a lot to me. I mean, I don't think that I've done anything at that point.
The reason I think this card's okay because I think that some number of people might be in the market for some burn, and I think that there's a good chance the card's just fringe for the reasons you're describing, as well as the fact that Lightning Strike and Abrade make it a tough time for dealing 3. Sweltering Suns deals 3. Lightning Strike deals 3. Abrade deals 3. Red is so long on ways to deal 3 damage.
That opportunity cost is exactly, where I was thinking, because I think there's going to be a fair number of decks that might, in other contexts, think about repeating Barrage, but aren't even going to be maxed out on Lightning Strikes. Because they're either like, all right, I want to go Harness Lightning or I want to go Abrade first, and I'd rather have that than the flexibility on a Lightning Strike. If they're not maxed out on Lightning Strikes, they definitely don't have the first repeating Barrage, at least not in their main deck.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we're in the same place. That a very cautious, it's a niche role player, but and it could be good if that's if you're trying to dodge, particular types of interaction, or you really just are that desperate for more burn.
Imagine the format goes to a place where there are enough of that new land, Field of Ruin, that red decks that want to have some kind of inevitability, they're like, either we're not going to be reliable on a bunch of Vance's blasting cannons and or ramming up ruins. We want a different source of recurring non-creature damage to fight control decks. Like, that's a really, imagine that the format has gone in a really specific place. I think that might be a time, right? But it has to. You have to have some context for this to rise up and be like, oh, I am the solution to this format, because it's just not. It doesn't start out that way in my mind.
Yeah, that's fair. So in terms of, I guess, other sort of engines, there's this cycle of I guess I don't even know if it's cycle, but some number of enchantments making treasures, like at the end, like for instance, the red one in the I guess collection in the group of them is the Trove of Temptation, 3 in a red. Each opponent must attack you with a planeswalker you control,
or a planeswalker you control,
with at least one creature each combat if able. And then, independent of that, at the beginning of your end step, create a colorless treasure, which is like a lotus petal but with treasure powers. Does Trove of Temptation tempt you at all?
It did tempt me. I thought a fair amount about it when I first saw it. So it's got like kind of a Gideon Jura to the front sentence, but not really. And then the second ability is something I definitely could imagine myself wanting.
What's a mana every turn, right? Like,
yeah,
and they stack.
But am I willing to invest 4 mana and a card slot for it? And I think not in the abstract. That's I'm not tempted enough.
I mean, is it even better than the spells that do it one time? Like, how long it takes you to, like, for instance, Depths of Desire. I guess that one's even only 3 mana. But Depths of Desire is the 3 mana instant, return target creature to its owner's hand, create a colorless treasure artifact token.
I really wanted to like this card. It's very. Is it Repeal? No. The one from Invasion. The opposite of Exclude.
Repulse.
It's very repulsish. And the question is, would you rather have a treasure or rather have a random card in hand? Because, like, I think this card is not ultimately going to be good enough. And the reason is because it's, in part, because it's in the same set as Perilous Voyage.
Yeah.
Like
Perilous Voyage being the 1 in a blue return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, and if its converted mana cost is 2 or less, scry 2.
Yeah, so Perilous Voyage is at least...
It's like a disperse, except that you can't bounce your own stuff, and it gains the upside of scry 2.
Yeah, do you remember?
Sometimes.
Do you remember when I played Voyage's End in the 5-color mono blue dragon deck? That's kind of the thought that I had when I saw Perilous Voyage. I'm like, a lot of the time this would just be better than Voyage's End, and then most of the time, actually, it's hugely better than Voyage's End if you're playing against cards like Gideon of the Trials, right? Like this is just a solution to a Gideon of the Trials emblem potentially, and that you could play with no opportunity cost to your, just your deck structure. And it also does the same thing as Voyage's End, and it's even better than Voyage's End when you're playing against fast weenies. Like that's kind of what I was thinking. And Scry 2, I think is... I mean,
Unsummon is the bar though, not Voyage's End.
Oh yeah, but I think Unsummon is
better than Voyage's End, right?
Well, yeah, but Unsummon isn't 100%, right? Some people play Consigned. Is it Consigned to Oblivion? There's some debate over what the right bounce effect is, and I think a big part of the thing that's informing that is just the ability to deal with getting into the Trials emblems, and like you don't want to necessarily have dedicated cards against that, so it's just nice to have a card that can answer a getting into the Trials emblem.
Yeah. Sometimes just having access to a little bit of bounce for what your control deck is in the market for, or if you're playing some kind of a tempo-based deck.
Yeah. There's just random stuff, like you could just bounce somebody's favorable wins mid-combat and get like a splatter like in during combat. That's pretty cool. And it's just nice to have these abilities when they come up, and I didn't actually have to slot a really specific card to have them when they come up.
Well, jumping back over to the treasure, I guess. What did you think of Pirate's Prize? 3 in a blue, draw 2 cards, create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sacrifice, the usual. So, the draw 3 and one of them's a lotus petal.
Pirate's Prize is already in competition with 2 different cards in Standard that cost the same, which is 3 in a blue, that have the same ability of drawing 2 cards. Both of those cards are instants, and Hieroglyphic Illumination and Glimmer of Genius both have substantial upside in addition to being an instant instead of a sorcery. So the question is the presence of treasure versus cycling or versus energy and scrying worth being a sorcery instead of an instant? And I think that's a pretty heavy question.
On first blush, the card certainly isn't as efficient as like Glimmer of Genius, but I do wonder though. Imagine a deck that has access to things like Spell Pierce, or Duress, or Magma Spray, or Fatal Push. Even Fatal Push is particularly fantastic with the treasure, right? Because if you can play Pirate's Prize and then Spell Pierce or Fatal Push in the same turn, that's pretty sweet. Unfortunately, it's mostly just what you would have already been able to do more easily if you played Divination. So that can't be enough.
Yeah, so you're saying like if you had just had Divination, you could have just done this on a previous turn and kind of got 4 mana back, right?
Or you could just play Divination on turn 4 and have Spell Pierce or Duress or Fatal Push or whatever. You don't have the treasure to sack, so that's at least something. I think Pirate's Prize, you're talking, if you ever wanted to even be in for this, which I don't know that we would want to be, but if you were, it seems like you have to be interested in ramping to 6. Right? Like, isn't that part of the equation? Where you're like, Pirate.
Now that you mention it, maybe it's awesome. Like, if you have this with Search for Azcanta, like, you have Search for Azcanta, which could potentially flip. This is putting a card into your graveyard. Like, Pirate's Prize is, itself a sorcery that would go to your graveyard. Then, you can go from 4 to 7, not even 6, and, like, land and approach. I actually... Or a Nicol Bolas. I actually like both of those ideas.
That's what I'm saying. I think Pirate's Prize in order to get enough out of this one, I think you have to be taken advantage all the way around. You have to be in the market for sorcery speed card draw. You have to be able to leverage the 1 mana to make some tempo plays in certain spots. And you have to be able to ramp into things that cost 6 or 7 so that you have enough upside to justify going to the trouble. But if you do all of that, I think it's at least, it's got an avenue to being used. Like that's not the worst, right? Like that's something.
That's actually much more interesting than I would have initially given Pirate's Prize.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta notice where they hide the certain words. Like Pirate's Prize. Pirate's Prize is indicative of the naming convention of a card they want to be attractive. And isn't the Pirate's Prize, out of curiosity, the booty that they're plundering?
Well, it is possible that they're plundering the booty, but I think like what you were saying with regards to maybe being able to trick in a spell pierce might even allow you to defend the booty, maybe protect the booty.
I don't know, man. At the end of the day, these pirates, they seem to go all over. They've got treasure up and down, and they spend it so quickly, but I guess they, in the meantime, are trying to go get more of it. Either way, it seems as though in order to really take advantage of this, in order to really get the most bang for your buck, you have to make good use of the treasure. You have to, I guess, I don't know, prize it. I guess, I mean, I don't know, I feel like we kind of got a little bit of a Pirate's Prize this week with the whole Mack Weldon situation.
Oh, yeah, so, speaking of the booty, Mack Weldon is a premium essentials brand that could protect your booty with just great underwear. They provide really comfortable, high-quality premium underwear, undershirts, socks, hoodies. And in fact, much like the pirates that we're talking about, this is like some pretty fancy stuff. It's nice.
Dude, this is quite the sales pitch. But wait, is there more?
Oh, there is. You know how, if you were a pirate and you had treasure, some of the treasure might be silver. Mack Weldon has a line of silver underwear that's naturally antimicrobial, which allows it to eliminate odor. So say you were on a pirate ship for a week, you wouldn't be stinking up the other pirates.
You're not going to end up very scurvy, huh?
No, it's actually it's awesome. You're not stinking up the other pirates, and if you were going to say go to the gym, it's great for IRL, going to the gym, working out, any kind of everyday wear.
I mean, you're convincing me. That and the pair that I'm wearing right now. It sounds like a pretty good plan. My only question is, how easy is it to spend the treasure?
All right, well, a couple of things with that. I, too, am wearing a pair of Mack Weldon underwear, so I can attest not only to the comfort and quality of the Mack Weldon underwear, which is high, but how easy it was to order. So it's super easy to order, super nice, well-designed website, and, I hate to admit this, but I ordered a pair of pants, and my booty wasn't so perfect, and returns were fast and easy, and they, boom, already, recredited my account, and I got something else. Already. Super quick.
Wait a minute. Flores, did your booty not fit?
It fit, but, I didn't look exactly like the model, when I had it on.
Are?
My wife was kind of like, I think that you should get something else, honey. So, let's leave it at that. And just,
at least it was nice. It was easy, fixing it the way you wanted.
Oh, yeah, it was. But, I actually can't say enough. She said, we should order more, around, next big kind of close order or even Christmas time. It's pretty nice stuff. Patrick and I are both wearing Mack Weldon underwear right now. If you want to get 20% off your order at MackWeldon.com, use the promo code TOPLEVEL. So Mack Weldon, MackWeldon.com. super nice stuff. Promo code top level.
So, well, as much as you are astounding me with all of this talk of covering the booty, there is a different, I guess, treasure that I was hoping we could cover. Where is he? The black card that makes them discard 2, Heartless Pillage. What do you think of this one?
So, Heartless Pillage is a sorcery. It costs black and 2. Target opponent discards 2 cards. And it has raid. If you attacked with a creature this turn, create a colorless treasure artifact token. You know, usual treasure. You know, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. I think this card probably has some potential, you know. Stupor type effects have perennially been at least fringe playable. This one has some okay upside.
Yeah, it is interesting that not only are you getting your mind rot on, which incidentally can't be like misdirected or whatever.
Yeah.
But like not only are you getting your mind rot on, you're ramping straight into 5 and fixing your mana. And it's not like mana in standard is like some trivial thing these days.
Yeah, I think that the rules of engagement might be changing in much the same way that they did when energy became a sub-theme in standard. Like,
in what way specifically here?
So, like, just, you know, if you look at Heartless Pillage is a card, it's 3 casting costs, like you said, it can ramp you to 5 in a color that hasn't had, you know, substantial mana ramp in a while. But let's say it takes you to 5. What can that take you to? It can take you to Revel in Riches. We can get some more treasures, maybe win. But, you know, there's some substantial threats that we can get. You know, like Dire Fleet Ravager. You know, if you're in multicolor, let's say for sake of argument, use Heartless Pillage to get reactive cards out of the opponent's hand, maybe a counter spell, maybe a point removal spell, and then you land Glorybringer or another big threat that's going to beat them up the next turn. It's just a way different dimension, way different experience to have. This is like a medium aggressive card, right? Like maybe a mid-range aggressive card, but like it does something, generates some value, and then also drives your... It doesn't just take resources away from your opponent, it also drives your proactive plan forward, potentially.
So, out of curiosity, what would be better? Mind Rot, and then you get a Lotus Petal? Or 1 in a black for they discard 2?
1 in a black, they discard 2 would be insane.
Right, but so would Mind Rot get a Lotus Petal. I'm not talking about the raid part. Okay, put it a different way.
I see what you're saying. There's no raid requirement. It's just Mind Rot, right. They get a Lotus Petal.
Because Mind Rot, like when this is working, when it's literally just Mind Rot, get a Lotus Petal, I think that it's frequently better than the 2-mana Mind Rot. Because like 2-mana Mind Rot, yeah, you can do it on turn 2, but that's not when Mind Rot is at its best anyway, right? We're under my Hymn to Turok. Mind Rot on turn 2, it's like, it's fine. But it's nice to play Mind Rot on turn 5, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking of the last time I can remember Mind Rot being, reasonably trafficked card in Standard. I think Jerry was playing it in the sideboard of a maybe mid-range control deck just to get burn cards out of a red deck, right? So you didn't need to play it on turn 3, right? You could just play it anytime he didn't want to get his face burned. If they had 3 or more cards in hand, that was a great time to cast it.
And I'm just saying, I guess, that if you have Heartless Pillage and everything's going well, at least the upside to me seems amazing. Like, when you actually can trigger the raid, I think you're getting not just better than Mind Rot, I think that you're getting, when raid is actually active, it's like at least comparable to Blightning. That's when you have raid active. Now, the problem is, of course, Blightning, you have only to have red and black mana, and you get it all the time. Raid, it's confusing how often you'll actually have it. But, like, if your deck is being very aggressive, I don't know. I think this one could be decent, man.
I mean, when you start using the word Blightning, man, that's like holy ground to me.
Right. I mean, instead of a lava spike, you're getting a lotus petal. And it's not like lava spike's always good, and it's not like lotus petal's always good, and obviously Blightning's easier to use. But even if this card was merely comparable to a Blightning half the time or 60% of the time, and the other half, the floor is still just Mind Rot. Right?
That's an okay floor.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, we've played that floor before. And this card is, call it halfway in between Blightning and Mind Rot. That's something to me. A lot of cards are in between Blightning and Mind Rot that we play, and they're usually closer to the Mind Rot end of the spectrum. Now, usually Mind Rot cards are not good enough, but this is, I think, a fair bit more than just a Mind Rot. So, I don't know. I'm more optimistic of this than I am of most Draw 2s.
So, I think Mind Rots have
Not Draw 2s, Discard
2s. Yeah, I think most Mind Rots have been, like, at least fringe playable. It just depends on how fast the fastest decks are, but they're pretty good in the sideboard a lot of the time.
Yeah, particularly if you have some sort of a pirate treasure thing going on, right? Like, imagine that this is actually literally part of your mana base. What if you were literally playing a mono black, a 5-color mono black deck, or a 5-color black red? Imagine if your mana base just takes into consideration the fact that you've got like a dozen cards making treasure, plus Spire of Industry and Aether Hub, and you can just, and then maybe you have like, I don't know, Concealed Courtyard and you have a few duels that are untapped or something, but for the most part you're just like a fast aggro deck that can consistently just start beating down and then can splash everything from Spell Pierce to cast out, or I don't know, whatever it is you want.
Let me spin a story for you. Let's say I'm like not that scary of a person. I'm just like BB, Gifted Aetherborn. Great card, right? So I'm Gifted Aetherborn.
Sure.
I'm just like swing with Gifted Aetherborn. And you're like, all right, whatever, take 2. And I'm like third swamp. So I'm just swamp. Heartless pillage you, make my treasure. And you're like, whatever. You're like, all right, I'm in main phase, spend 3 mana to kill your Gifted Aetherborn, because I am the like not scariest person in the world, because all I have is 3 swamps in play. Then I'm like, thanks, man. Spire of Industry, like, or whatever land I want, because it doesn't even matter, because I have the treasure. And then I'm like, land Scarab God. And, Spire of Industry would help, but I don't actually need it, considering I can just make a blue for free here. And they're like, uh-oh. Maybe I shouldn't Sweltering Suns that one Gifted Aetherborn instead of leaving up my Supreme Will mana. And, it's on.
Yeah.
That could be a thing.
That sounds like a reasonable start.
Sounds pretty good. It's good to me, right? Like, also, the Scarab God is going to give you active long-term fuel to raid in the future with no incremental investment in creatures.
So what if you're playing a blue-black deck that's going to end with the Scarab God? Don't worry. But like, you're, like early on, you've got Siren Storm Tamer, Kite Sail Freebooter, and I don't know, some number of pirates that are evasive and cheap and disruptive.
I get it. Your guys are getting in.
Maybe the Menace dude, I don't know.
Yeah, little chance of being interacted with via combat in the first couple of turns just to set up raid for Heartless Pillage. I actually, my mind was going to a similar place, actually.
So if you get him with a discard, if you get him with the Kite Sail Freebooter on turn 2, that's like you're wearing away at their hand and bringing the game closer to the spot where you can get them with the discard, the Heartless Pillage, when they have 3 or less cards in hand, 2 or 3 cards. But part of where I'm going with this is I wonder if a deck involving a bunch of pirates and a bunch of treasure, and who knows, maybe you've got a few miscellaneous things like that Pirate Anthem Fell Flagship, which is the 3-cost vehicle we talked about the other week. Pirates you control get +1/+0, and whenever Fell Flagship deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card, and then crew 3. So Fell Flagship is like an anthem for your pirates, which is great taking them from 1 to 2, because a lot of the best pirates, 1 to 2 or 2 to 3. But then also, it's a disruptive threat that dodges sweepers, and the discard from Fell Flagship stacking with the Kite Sail Freebooter and the Pillage. But then also the artifactness of it, Fell Flagship being an artifact combined with all the miscellaneous treasures. And I don't know if we end up playing something like Heart of Kirin or I don't know, some number of Scrap Peep Scrounger, I don't know, something, right? If you just play if you play Metallic Rebuke, and one, Metallic Rebuke already, but two, our preview card, Lookout's Dispersal, you could have some pretty sick tempo plays around turn 3 or 4 or 5. Like, imagine if you get them with the Pillage on turn 4 and now have a loaded, you have a treasure and 1 land open so that you can just look out Dispersal whatever they play for their turn. Or you make a second treasure and now you can just Metallic Rebuke, tapping 2 treasures and 1 land instead of actually sacrificing them.
That deck sounds like it would destroy Approach and blue-red control. So if control is a thing early on, I think that kind of a strategy would probably be awesome against them. I don't know about what else we're expecting, but I think that wing of the metagame be pretty beat up.
Well, what do you think about some kind of costly plunder approach? Costly plunder is that 1 and a black instant, draw 2 cards, and as an additional cost to play it, you have to sacrifice a creature or artifact. So notably, unlike the previous versions, this one you can actually sacrifice an artifact or a creature, meaning if you get one of these treasures, you can just be up a card. Now you have a 2-mana draw 2. So, these 2 cards combine together, and you've got Probe.
I think this card is going to see some play, and maybe in the context that you're talking about, but one of the things that I was thinking is that Karizev's expertise and effects like that are going to be substantially increased in value soon. Because dinosaurs. So I don't know if they're necessarily going to be main deck cards, but I think people are going to want to take your 6/6 and kill you with it when your play is to tap out to have that be a blocker. And obviously, one of the tried and true combos is to threaten somebody's thing and then sacrifice it. And I think if you've got some synergy in your deck where you want to costly plunder some either irrelevant permanents or low-value permanents mid-game, or even combat, right? You're like, all right, this guy's getting blocked, just get a little bit of value out of him instead. But then also combine that with a Karizev's expertise or some kind of... There are other threatens that are going to be viable in Standard. I think that's going to be a pretty cool combo.
No, I could see it. It's going to end up really depending, as you say, on how good the threatens are, but that combo seems pretty good, and this is a reasonable way to do it. If you're going to be, if you're looking for that sort of threatened sack outlet, this is a much more reliable way than just having a sorcery speed sack outlet creature in play or something. Yeah, and it curves so naturally,
and it's just fine. Other times, you just have a random treasure in play, and you're in top deck mode, and you're like, all right, time to draw 2. It's basically a divination, right? If you've got a treasure, or actually it's instant speed divination, right? You count the treasure's mana as 1 thing, and then 2 regular mana, and just draw it up.
Okay. So actually, the black one that's the black part of that cycle of making treasures each turn, Revel in Riches. Curious your thoughts on this one. 4 and a black. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you get a treasure. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game.
I don't know if you recall, but I think you said something to me once about if you've got 10 extra Lotus Petals, you better win the game. I was very excited about this card originally, but I'm a little cooler on it now. I like these cards that give you a way to win outside of just the regular ways to win, but a 5 casting cost enchantment that doesn't really do anything the turn that it comes into play has some costs beyond what's in the top right corner.
Yeah. I do recall such debates.
I have a different card advantage-y magical Christmas landish card. I want to get your take on.
Mm-hmm.
Grim Captain's Call. So it's 2 and a B for a sorcery. Return a pirate card from your graveyard to your hand. Then do the same for Vampire, Dinosaur, and Merfolk.
I don't know, man. You got to work really hard to get a draw 4 out of this, because a draw 2, you can do much better.
Yeah.
Right? Much, much better. Draw 3, you're getting up to actually par.
But a draw 3 for this amount of mana usually comes at a substantial...
No, I'm saying like draw 3 from your graveyard. This is already... Drawing 3 creatures back from your graveyard for 3 mana, it's something, but it's not like it's necessarily like, oh my god, let's play that. It's something. It's just... You have to be like able to get 4 before you're even like doing a thing.
Nobody wants to get like 1 Kitesail freebooter back, right? Like that's not really worth either the mana or the card in your deck.
So I don't know. I love a challenge, and this thing is presenting. It's throwing down a gauntlet. So like I think it's a kind of a sweet card. It's super weird to do in the same set as March of the Drowned, but whatever. Who am I to judge?
Like I actually think that it'd be tough for this card to be good, even if it said like return a Sphinx to your hand, do the same for like a Serpent Beast and some other like cycling type, right? I think that card would be still difficult to make the bar if it said those.
So here's what I'm picturing though with this. If you play like, I don't know, 8 or 9 merfolk, 8 or 9 vampires, 8 or 9 dinosaurs, 8 or 9 pirates, like maybe there's some kind of a weirdo deck where you're like, okay, Deep Root Champion is my only merfolk. Or no, not my only. Like, say I have 2. I have Deep Root Champion, which is the new Quirion Dryad, which, by the way, I think that card seems dope. But Deep Root Champion, and then the Explore one for 2. Merfolk Branchwalker, 1 and a green for a 2/1 when it enters the battlefield, Explore. So that it's like 40% of the time a Silvergill Adept, 60% of the time it's a 3/2 with Scry 1.
That's pretty good, right?
Although, yeah, I guess actually Deep Root Champion is kind of not that good if you're playing with 32 creatures in your deck. So maybe we'll find a different one Merfolk. But if you just play with like 8 or 9 vampires, 8 or 9 Merfolk, 8 or 9 dinosaurs, 8 or 9 the other one, it's still pretty medium. Alternatively, what if you just spent only 1 mana and played March of the Drowned? The B, either Raise Dead or double Raise Dead for pirates. Arrgh!
I think that this card is probably good enough to be like, if you're playing a lot of pirates, that I think that people would play like maybe 2 of them main deck, and then maybe sideboard more against decks that like either a red deck where you were going to get a lot of fights and do attrition, or against a control deck where they would remove a bunch of your creatures and get card advantage. But I think like the assumption that you're going to have 2 pirates in your graveyard at a time that you're going to have mana to cast this, want to cast this on a from a tempo perspective, is going to limit the number of main deck March of the Drowned. But I think it'll definitely be some amount of play in pirate decks.
Sure.
What do you think? You think it's like, because it's like basically draw 2 for B. That's pretty strong.
When this card was, maybe the format was different. When it was for zombies, it wasn't like that overwhelming, but it's very, very possible that this mix of pirates is more conducive to this as a card draw engine. Like the pirates seem to be on a little bit different of a game plan than they're not just a bunch of mindless bodies. Like there's a lot of disruption and some acceleration and some synergies in a variety of weird ways.
But for the most part, not super efficient bodies, right?
Right.
So, like, even if the pirates are good, like, you see a lot of, like, 2-1 or 1-2 for 2 that you're going to play, or, like, 4-4 for 5, right? Not, like, the insane kind of power to casting cost ratios that we've seen in some other decks. Or, like, just immediate impact, right? Like a Long Tusk Cub is a 2-2 for 2, or a Hydra's, you know, not that impressive on the cardboard stats. But when you consider what they could do, given the amount of energy that might be in play when they come in, their implied bodies are much bigger. So I think because of that, the pirates might get into attrition, you know, kind of like trade for trade situations more than maybe the zombies did, in such a way that this might give you the ability to just kind of move forward. Also, like, what if you were just like chump blocking a Hydra a bunch? Like, you could do that while developing another game plan.
Yeah, but you could do that before with the other one, with the zombie one. The reason I'm way more excited about this one is because here's, to me, the 180 difference. So many of the pirates are must kills or have bullseyes in their head. Kite Sail Freebooter, people are going after that guy. Rowdy Crew, what are they going to do? Not. Plus, the Rowdy Crew is discarding cards anyway, making it easier to get creatures into your graveyard and giving you something to do with the material. Captain Lannery Storm, people are going to want to kill her. That's so 180 the opposite of zombies. The zombies are so frequently, most of them are not worth killing. And as a result, a card that gives you 2 zombies for 1 mana is very frequently much less useful because nobody wanted to kill the zombies anyway. The zombies kept coming back anyway. You didn't need this to get them.
Yeah, a lot of them can come back.
The pirates don't do that. The pirates don't come back. The pirates have bullseyes. So I'm actually kind of excited about this card because I think that the pirates make so much better use of this card than the zombies ever did.
Well, also,
and it's got the backside. It has the backup plan of just raise dead, man. It's not like raise dead's that bad. I would raise dead.
Would you raise dead? Just raise dead?
If I could get 2 pirates. Hostage. Because I think some of these pirates are so good, like Hostage Taker. Hostage Taker seems like the bee's knees, man.
Yeah,
I don't understand how Hostage Taker isn't really, really good.
Yeah, I think it's pretty strong. I think, like, you know, obviously it depends, right? All these things are context driven, but it seems very, very comparable or better than a number of cards that I've been very happy to play in the past, right? It's kind of better than a Faceless Butcher most of the time. Yeah.
I just think the control magic aspect is going to end up being such a big part of this one's puzzle.
Oh, I agree.
Actually, there's a different blue-black pirate, though, that we haven't really talked about. Deadeye Plunderers, 3 blue-black for a 3/3 that gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control, and you can pay 2 blue-black to create a colorless treasure artifact token.
Oh.
What do you think of this guy?
This guy's pretty cool. Just it could potentially be just enormous, right? If you've got a deck that's got
isn't this a 10/10 for? This is like a 10/10 for 5, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's no reason that you're limited to treasures, right? So you could just play this guy with Inspiring Statuary or something, and you're already on your way, right? Maybe he's buddies with Tezzeret, right? Like, he's in the right colors. He doesn't have to be a pirate deck, right? He could be an artifact deck. The only thing that just kind of holds back my enthusiasm on Deadeye Plunderers, because also the ability is cool, right? The ability to make treasures over time is strong. If that ability were, 2 blue-black, put a +1/+1 counter on Deadeye Plunderers, that would be a worse ability than just making a treasure in context. It's just kind of like there's another card that costs 3 black-blue that has an ability, it's about 4 mana. And, I just... maybe a little conflict there. So I'm not sure. But it seems like a cool card.
So, like, what if this guy is in your Colossus deck?
I think that would be a very apt place for him to be. It's also a non-artifact threat in the Colossus deck.
Like, one, he can help feed all your other artifact synergies, you know? But two, if he's coming down regularly as a 10-10 or an 11-11, a 12-12, I mean, at a certain point, you're kind of doing something, right? I mean, that's something, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, well, just think about creatures for the most part that see play that cost 3 or more mana in Standard, right? Like, most of them have a pretty specific profile, right? They either do something awesome when they come into play, like, for example, Rogue Refiner draws a card and gives you energy. Whirler Virtuoso is just the bee's knees at 3. Same thing with Pia. You know, they're like, boom, immediate impact. Or like even what's his name? 3/2 for G2. Make a clue whenever land comes into play. Can't believe
Tireless Tracker.
Yeah, can't believe I can't remember his name. Tireless
Your
Tracker.
boy, Tireless
I know.
Tracker.
I can't believe I can't remember his name. Like, all those guys, they're generating value, and then as you go up the mana chain, you have these guys like Glorybringer, Archangel Avacyn, or of course Scarab God that have like insane impact on the game, right? This guy potentially has a massive amount of size for 5 mana. And then he's also a card advantage engine. Right? Like, I actually think that he's got a shot. It's just his direct competition with Scarab God is something like, it's on the nose. It's on the nose on the cost, it's on the nose on the color, it's on the nose on the activation cost.
So, like, my biggest problem with this guy is that when I look at him, and I'm like, man, I'm picturing this whole Colossus deck with, like, maybe even that demon.
The black demon?
Yeah.
Make the -1 guy?
Yeah. Like, even if we're playing, like, Herald of Anguish and Tezzeret and this guy and the Colossus or whatever, I'm still playing the Scarab God, man. The Scarab God is a messed up card.
Let me see if I can lure you away from the Scarab God in another color for just a set of thoughts.
Okay.
On 2 cards we've talked about, one of them pretty glowingly, and then one of them, you know, kind of like, seems cute, not as good as a lot of stuff that you could potentially be playing. But I think maybe they could make beautiful music together in a not intuitive deck. What do you think about Rowdy Crew and Burning Sun's Avatar, with Burning Sun's Avatar potentially sideboard, potentially main deck, Rowdy Crew probably main deck, in a blue-red Godpharaoh's Gift deck?
I don't know, man. I don't understand what is this, like, I'm missing it. Rowdy Crew I get with your Godpharaoh's Gift, but what does Burning Sun's Avatar have to do with the price of tea in China?
I just like the idea of Debtors Knelling Burning Sun's Avatar back. Seems strong to me.
Yeah, but reanimating it, whatever. I mean, does that sound stronger to you than the Angel?
Well, no, the Angel's just the...
Angel of Invention and Champion of Wits are so much better than that card, both on the front side when you just play them, and then on the back side when you reanimate them.
The reason I was thinking about it potentially as sideboard, obviously we're compromising size if it's coming from the graveyard rather than, you know, the front side, is just I just wanted to have some kind of effect in the deck that would allow me to interact with creatures, you know, while driving my core engine. I don't know, maybe it's unnecessary. That if once that engine's online, creature decks often just fold. So
yeah, I don't know. I think that it sounds like one of those situations where Godpharaoh's Gift is the card doing it. And I'm with you. I think Godpharaoh's Gift's a powerful card. I think you're trying to, like, hand wave sneak Burning Sun's Avatar into the mix when maybe it's okay, but it's just so would anything else. It's not particularly efficient with this. You're even losing the stats that you're paying for, and it's Angel of Invention and Champion of Wits just seems so much stronger.
Well, yeah, and Champion of Wits is just unreal in that deck. Well, here's a card rather. I think it's just fantastic, and we haven't talked about it yet. What do you think about Commune with Dinosaurs?
So Commune with Dinosaurs is the look at the top 5 cards of your library sorcery for just, it's just G, sorcery, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a dinosaur or land card, put them from among them and put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. I mean, this is pretty sweet, right? Like in a deck that can have to think about what the critical mass is of dinosaurs, but at the very least, if you're able, this is just getting you a land most of the time, right? Like you have at least the option.
If you're in the market for a land, yeah.
Right, and I'm saying then you have the upside of being able to get dinosaurs. And if your deck has 20 dinosaurs in it, if your deck has 12 dinosaurs in it, you're going to be able to get a dinosaur the majority of the time. I mean, I don't know, this card seems pretty good.
Yeah,
this is like the Traverse the Ulvenwald replacement, right?
Well, I was thinking very Oath of Nissa, right? Like contextually Oath of Nissa for dinosaurs. Obviously, it's just not good enough to play if you don't have some amount of dinosaurs in your deck. Just like, maybe get a land is not exciting. But especially if you've got a bunch of dinosaurs, you might want to pick them. If you can curve dinosaurs, you say like, either you play this in the first turn and get the dinosaur you want to play in the second turn, or like later in the game you get the dinosaur you want. I think that there's a lot of play here. Oh yeah, this card seems pretty good. I mean, Carnage Tyrant is good. That's the 4GG 7/6 trample hexproof, can't be countered. I don't know. Everybody's so excited about Ripjaw Raptor. Maybe. I mean, I can see it. But it smells to me suspiciously. Yeah, I'm suspicious at the very least. It seems okay. It's just now Regisaur Alpha. That's a hell of a card. Well, so let's talk about Ripjaw Raptor for a sec because we haven't talked about that one before. That's 2GG for a 4/5, so it's very Urnham Djinn-ish, but it has the ability Enrage. When Ripjaw Raptor is dealt damage, draw a card. So this is my read on this card. Think about the decks that were expected to be out there early on, right? There's going to be approach decks. There's going to be Godfarrow's Gifts decks. There's going to be red decks. There's going to be teamer decks. Where is this card breaking the opponent's will? That's what I'm thinking, right? Like, approach doesn't care if you have a 4/5 for 4. That's not even on their list, right? You keep talking about approach as if it's this defining deck of the format. I think it's going to be played. I think it's going to be in the but somewhere. 5%? Oh, I think more than that. It's but sure. I red decks, teamer decks, I think are going to be the most popular early on. I think a red deck is way less scared of Ripjaw Raptor than it would be contextually, than a Hydra on turn 4. I'd much rather, as a red player play against a Ripjaw Raptor where they might draw a card versus a Hydra just buries me. I don't know. Bristling Hydra is not that good against red. I think it's pretty good. If a mid game Bristling Hydra where they have some energy reserve is very difficult to deal with. Maybe. Sure doesn't block. Nobody blocks. But I don't know. What do you think? Is this breaking anybody's will? Right? You keep talking about will breaking. I don't know about any of that. I just know that if you're in the market for dinosaurs, Ripjaw Raptor is way more of a dinosaur than Bristling Hydra. And specifically, you might be, because some of the dinosaur rewards are pretty sweet, like Savage Stomp being a +1/+1 counter, and then Fight, since it doesn't cost 3 if you have a dinosaur. If you play it on a dinosaur, it only costs 1. That's pretty good. And then the Commune with the Dinosaurs we just spoke of, that's pretty good. And then in terms of acceleration, the 1 in a green, tap for a mana of any color that gets +2/+2 if you have any dinosaurs. That's at least something, right? That's kind of exciting. I mean, it might not be good enough because there's just so many other options, but if you're in the market for accelerators that are even cheaper, there's that white one that's like a white for a 0/3 that dinosaurs cost you 1 less to play. That's a hell of a punch, right? A 1/2 punch. If you have Kinjali's Caller
on turn 1. And you could alternatively have Priest of Waking Suns for a 1 cost or for a 1 drop enabler or reward, I guess. But if you play the Accelerator, Kinjali's Caller, you can start dropping dinosaurs the very next turn.
Oh yeah, the extreme case is you drop like
Kinjali's Sunwing.
What, or 2 Raptor Companions on turn 2? Right.
Sure.
That's a lot of damage.
Yep. So, I don't know. There's something with this dinosaur thing. Like, there's a bunch of really good rewards. And so anyway, my point was people seem to be into that Ripjaw Raptor a whole bunch. It seems fine to me if you're specifically in the market for dinosaurs and you've got ways to shock and, you're like, oh, I want to turn my shock into a cantrip and my harness lightning into a cantrip and my, that's all well and good.
I mean,
and maybe that's enough.
Ryle, right?
Yeah. I wonder if this is what the format's really going to be about. The format just seems like the battle for tempo is going to be so fierce.
Well, there are a lot of good bounce cards, right? Fatties historically have not liked being against bounce cards.
There are a lot of bounce cards. I mean, this set alone has like 6 or 7? What are your 7 favorite bounce cards from this set?
From this set? I told you the Voyages End upgrade I like a lot. But I mean, even if you wanted to, like, Hostage Shaker, for example, is like it's not, it doesn't bounce, but like it's exactly.
I wasn't even counting that. Right, and there's all these guys that tap all your guys. It is weird to me how there's like 15 different blue cards that are all the same thing. That are all tap your guy, bounce your guy, my guy's unblockable, your guy is blinked. It's interesting. I don't know. I wonder what they're going for there. All right, you got one more super dope card you're excited about?
I don't know. Like, there's just like simple stuff that I think might be pretty cool, like Sky Terror. I think Sky Terror is just like just a guy many versions of me would have wanted to play in multiple formats. I like him. Yeah,
I think you got to be really in the market for the Dinosaur Tribal. That's the red-white 2/2 flying menace. It seems like you. I mean, I could imagine it. And if you're just, maybe you're just a red-white deck that wants an evasive creature. Yeah, he seems okay. He's like a role player. At least he's something different. Like, he's hitting from a slightly different angle than a lot of the other cards.
Yeah, I think he's just solid, right? Like, he's a little better than Gaia Skyfolk. He's a little better than Leonon Sky Knight. Like, those are all cards people have played in the past. I don't know how much play they'd be getting today, but Menace and flying, Menace in addition to flying and being Dinosaur Tribe, I think like maybe the sum total is just way better than a Gaia Skyfolk. And if it's not, if it's just a Gaia Skyfolk, because the Menace doesn't come up that much because it's flying, like that's still on the short list of role players. If I'm in the market for like red-white aggro because I like Legion's Landing and haste a lot, right? Like I'm already in.
Okay, so I got one more for you. Vona, Butcher of Megan. It's 3 white-black for a 4/4 legendary creature, Vampire Knight. So it's a 4/4 Vigilance lifelink with tap and pay 7 life, destroy target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only during your turn.
This card is, I think it could be awesome. It's really reminiscent of a lot of cards that have been really successful in previous standards at cost and kind of combination of abilities. But one of the things that those cards that were successful all had, that this one doesn't have, is some way to defend itself, right? So it's similar, I think, to the 5 casting cost Ghost.
Like Blood Baron Vizkopa?
Yeah, that's the other one that I was thinking. Like that Blood Baron of Vizkopa is the same size, right? But he's got prot black and prot white, and potentially gets really big, so pulls him out of red range. But this guy nothing is naturally defending him. The thing is, if he gets online, like 4/4 Vigilance Lifelink is a really powerful thing to have in play sometimes.
Oh, you mean Batterskull?
Like, yes, it's very powerful. But unlike Batterskull, like Batterskull's a super durable threat, right? Like, if you kill it, it comes back, right? This guy, he's just 5 casting costs for a thing that you might kill. But his Vindicate ability is real weird, right? Like they gave him vigilance, but then they have a huge set of restrictions on the Vindicate.
So I know this type of card isn't usually good, and the bar is high. I say usually good as in like it's a creature that's not protecting itself, that costs more, that isn't immediately drawing cards, blah, blah, blah. Dude, this card looks good to me. This card looks real good. So, like, I think that Vindicate ability is awesome. Awesome. You see, when you attack with Vona, and then after it attacks, activate the ability, you can just destroy whatever they played. And then gain back more than half the life you paid to get rid of it.
Yeah, so it's like you're only paying 3.
And you didn't even spend any mana. Like, even if you do this on your opponent's end step, I don't know. Like,
you can't do it on your opponent's end step. It's only on your turn.
No, not the end step. Sorry, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. If you do it on your own turn in response to something, you can create it's not play as a sorcery. So, like, when it's your turn, you can, like, if depending on how things go, you can, like for instance, imagine your opponent played a combat trick. You can thwart it with Vona.
Oh, it's also awesome against gang block.
Yes. If you attack with 4 creatures and your opponent has 4 creatures or 5 creatures or 6 creatures or whatever, blocking is super hard for them, even in the middle of combat. But I just think a 4/4 Vigilance lifelink, well, not good enough, isn't off by all that much. If you ever activate this card, it's so good and it gives you so versatile of options. And remember, it can go after planeswalkers too. And here's another thing. With Grasp of Darkness rotating out and Lightning Strike and Abrade providing so much extra incentive for people to not be using Harness Lightning, this card is like not actually completely trivial. You can't Fatal Push it. You can't Lightning Strike it, at least not straight up. And I could imagine very easily this being part of a plan. Remember, there's a lot of discard. If this is part of some kind of a mid-rangey strategy, a plan that involves some discard, whether it's Duress or Transgress the Mind or even that Mind Rot thing we spoke of earlier, because obviously this is a 5-drop that's hella to ramp into. I don't know, man. I think this card looks really good. So I think this is my sleeper pick of the set.
All right.
Plus vampires, man. If you're looking for the vampire type at all, I wasn't even counting that. I just want to put this guy in a deck where I'm like, you know what I don't have anymore is Archangel Avacyn or Obnixilis. If I'm playing some kind of a mid-rangey black-white deck, like, I think that it's not really... I still like the Scarab God way better. But, like, if I'm
the Scarab God is different colors than...
Exactly. If I was playing a white-black mid-range deck, this seems like a very exciting 5-drop to me.
Yeah. There's actually one other thing I just wanted to throw out there, because we ended a couple episodes ago with a big spell, Overflowing Insight for UUU, target player draws 7 cards. I just wanted to note, it is kind of cute that you can go Locust God on 6 and then cast this on 7 in consecutive turns. I don't know. It seems like it could be big. And that's already a big effect.
You're just putting down the Locust God, and then it lives, and you don't, and then you just spend 7 mana not committing. You know, I don't know. I guess. What are you going to do if they kill your Locust God in response?
Draw 7 cards.
And just discard to hand size, like 4 cards.
All right, just stick a pin in my balloon.
No, it's good, man. You should do that. You should do that.
Look, we both know I'm attacking with Earthshaker Kenra on turn 2. We both know that's what's going to happen.
Now you're talking. That sounds real good to me.
Yeah. All right.
All right, man. Well, I got a feeling I'm going to be playing. I got a feeling that when the Pro Tour rolls around, there's a pretty decent chance that I'll be playing the Scarab God. and I'm really liking the look of blue-black. But I gotta tell you, this Vona Butcher of Magan, it has me interested. Let's put it that way.
You can go Esper not too difficult with the mana base that they've given us. That's a doable thing.
You could. I'm just saying that once you're playing blue, I don't know that you need Vona anymore. I just don't know. I'm saying that like once you, because like yeah, I mean it's possible, but I think Vona seems kind of exciting. It's just not in the same. I want to see what this format is really like, where it's not just being completely warped by Teamer energy, the Scarab God, and Ramen Up Red.
Yeah, I think that one of the big questions is how's Ramen Up Red? Look, what are they going to do with the 4 or the 4/5, depending on if they're going to adopt things like Captain Lannery Storm, kind of in competition with Pia or On-Crop Crasher at the 3, because that really changes what their high end is going to be. Like with the format changing, like Hazard, I think is at a very different power level. Like that card is only okay against Teamer, and it's like kind of bad against some decks. And most of the decks that Hazard's awesome against, it's awesome in the mirror still. So I think it's going to still be good against red, but like it's like one of the main decks that beat up on was blue-red control. I don't know if that's even going to be a deck post in the new standard. So maybe we'll see Rowdy Crews. Maybe we'll see just Glory Bringers because people are accelerating.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Tournament starting soon.
Yep. All right. Let's tell people where they can find us.
You can find us on the internet. You can find us on the TV show, the radio.
They cannot find us on the TV shows.
Okay, in that case, they better go to Twitter and Facebook and, let's see, Instagram and Michael J's house and Patreon.
They can find us or me. Well, sometimes both of us at my house. That is true. Patreon, you're right. So you can find us at Patreon, and we would thank you if you help support us there and help bring top-level podcasts to you every week. This week, we'd like to thank Ed Morgan, one of our patrons. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
That's it for this week.
All right. See you next week, man.
Bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends